Alright, hello, and welcome to my Halloween special, which at this rate will be uploaded closer to Christmas than Halloween. I am sorry, I am a very bad YouTuber. But then dogs are for all seasons, not just Halloween. There are so many different series and interpretations of Scooby Doo, but today we're sticking to the original Where Are You episodes, of which there are 25. In this video I will rank all 25 from worst to best, based on the villains, their schemes, the setting, and all the goofy shenanigans you expect from a Scooby Doo cartoon. Some may get extra points if it's harder to work out who the villain is, and this is not a concrete list. It's all my own personal opinion, so I expect people to have different opinions. Imagine that! Different opinions on the internet? No, that's not allowed. People have to shout at me. So get your Scooby snacks ready, everyone. Let's start the list at number 25. This is the worst episode in my opinion. Firstly, the monster. It's just a big ape. Hardly anything paranormal or frightening. I mean, I get they're probably trying to parody King Kong, but this just ain't it. It's not even slightly a mystery who the villain is, since we see him at the start of the episode in an ape outfit. Then later on, he does something so stupid, it's almost unbelievable. He takes the head of his costume off and allows himself to be photographed. I mean, gee, I wonder who it could be. Where have we seen someone with an egghead before? His scheme is also just petty. He was upset he was not given the lead role in the movie, and so he has a temper tantrum and decides that almost murdering this lady is the only way. Just a really sour point in the series.
Stop! Coming back here! Help! My princess has been dog-napped!
Huh? Dog-napped?
This episode has a good premise. There is a dog napper out there stealing dogs from the streets. It has the potential to be an interesting idea, but they go nowhere with it. Because it's shown very early in the episode, the Indian witch doctor is just a big fat phony.
You fool! That's not Bob Miller's champion Great Dane! How could you mistake this mutt for a show dog? Huh?
You're a phony! Hey, this guy's a great big phony!
When ranking these, it's also hard to rank villains, which are quite possibly problematic to a modern audience. So a white guy dressing up as an Indian witch doctor, pretty terrifying for modern viewers.
101 ghosts and ghouls.
This was a difficult one for me to rank. The costume and his menacing laugh make the ghost of Hyde quite the creepy culprit. But then the rest of the episode and plot has more holes than the film holds. This has to be one of the stupidest villains. He manages to rob a bank and decides, oh gee, where should I hide out? Oh, I know, the back of the mystery machine. Quite possibly the worst place to hide if you're dressing up as a ghost. Once he is discovered, he runs off into his hideout, basically just showing the gang exactly where he lives. Anyone that's familiar with Robert Louis Stevenson's novel, The Strange Case of Mr. Hyde, will already know that Dr. Jekyll was gonna be the villain. I'll give him credit though, he at least does try to deceive the audience and trying to convince them that Helga could have been the villain.
We have come for the golden mask.
But I no longer have the mask. It was just purchased by a young girl.
Then we will find her.
Some elements of this episode are great. Interesting temple, threatening henchman, neat villain intro, great car chase, and oh yeah, never mind. But again, it does have a really good car chase, which is by far the highlight of the episode. I had this episode on VHS when I was a young classic, and even I managed to spot a very obvious animation error. And now this show is filled with lots of them, but when an 8-year-old can spot them, you know there is a problem. The werewolf is a classic villain archetype, and the backstory that this werewolf rose from the grave by clawing his way out is quite the chilling tale. Although in reality, this would not scare off many people. In fact, you would get the opposite. You would have loads of ghost hunters trying to experience something.
What's that noise? What is that noise? What is that noise?
This is quite a unique episode, due to the fact the villain isn't named in the end of the episode. He is just credited as Sheep Rustler, which in my books means they have failed to do the minimum in backstory for the villain, giving him a name. So I can't rank this one that highly. People could argue that Silas Long is his name, but surely even the most moronic villain would not put their real name on a grave, basically pointing out, "Hello everybody, I am the werewolf, everyone."
Gold City Guest Ranch. Vacancy.
Well, maybe we can spend the night there.
The idea of a ghost miner sounds pretty good, and the setting is a really creepy looking ghost town. But then when you end up seeing the miner, it's just some guy. That's all I can describe him as. There's nothing really special or scary about him. It's just some dude in the mines going about scaring people. It's the bare minimum costume you could come up with. At least there was some debate during the episode of who the miner could be, since both Ben and Hank could both be suspects. Although in the end, it was just silly old Hank on his stilts. But for a short guy on stilts, he sure does run fast. I've only seen one person run faster on stilts. Let's not go there.
Foolish mortals! You have returned to face the wrath of Mono Tiki Tia!
This show only had 2 seasons, and yet there is 2 different witch doctors. Was they really struggling for ideas that early on? Again, hard to tell if this costume is problematic, but it's yet another white guy dressing up as a witch doctor. What on earth is going on here? I will give the villain credit though, since he does fool people by having someone else play the witch doctor on their first appearance. One part of this episode I was not expecting was his reactions to Scoob and Shag's different gags. He must be high on something at least.
Relax. It's just a wax figure. There's nothing for real.
That's for real.
This was the season finale for Scooby Doo Where Are You? And it wasn't exactly a classic. Season 2 was very short, with only 8 episodes. It just seems like they could have ended on something better than a big clump of mashed potato. He's in fact a wax phantom, supposedly brought to life by this creepy dude, who they clearly wanted to make look as sinister as possible as a double bluff. At least during season 2 they started to make it less clear who the villain was gonna be in the end. This one is decent enough, just nothing that memorable for me.
Demon of evil, take the form of the living and come forth from the flame.
The classic pairing of a witch and a zombie goes together like fish fingers and custard, and the UK with competence. Despite the odd pairing, there is a lot to enjoy about this one. There are some great visuals, and the witch does come across as relatively threatening. Her ability to float around would certainly turn my pants brown. The zombie is more of the muscle and not the brains. He doesn't really have any powers at all. The main problem with this episode, though, is there's no other possible suspects. There's only Zeke and Zeb. They are the only two people you meet in the entire episode, so let's be fair, it's not really a mystery that they end up being the villains.
Hey, Daphne, Velma, come over here.
The Puppet Master certainly left a big impact on many children. I was terrified of this guy when I was young. It gave me flashbacks of the Child Catcher. He is quite the threat, with his ability to move around the abandoned theatre at lightning speed. Again, maybe a bit too obvious who the villain was going to be in the end, but I feel like he didn't care. He was all in it for the fun. His laugh is enough to send shivers down my spine. He comes across as one of those guys that gets a kick from creeping out people. But also, where the hell is all the cheese on Shaggy's pizza? What the heck is this? I'd complain to that pizza place immediately.
So you want your fortunes told? Gather round, my pretties, and we'll peer into the crystal ball.
With 3 for the price of 1 in terms of classic villains, you would think this would be an instant classic. A werewolf, Dracula, and Frankenstein's monster. It has some great moments and gags, and even a creepy gypsy played by the great Jane Foray, of course famous for many cartoon voices.
I see great danger as long as you stay in these mountains.
What kind of danger?
Evil forces from the world of the dead.
None of the villains, though, end up getting enough screen time for me. It wastes a lot of potential for a great mystery. It's clear quite early on they all must be played by the same guy, as you never see any of them together in the same room. I did like the trick where he appeared to turn into a vampire bat. That was really cool. And the castle does look amazing. Great setting for an episode. It also gets some bonus points, as it's the first episode where the villain says the famous line once he is captured.
The Black Knight is supposed to come alive when the moon is full.
Like, wow, the moon was full last night.
Back to where it all began, and what a way to start the series. The story of a Black Knight coming to life during a full moon, the setting of a museum at midnight. Plus, considering this was the first episode, many would not have known it was just a man in a costume. And again, not many would suspect this dumpy little curator would be able to pull off such a menacing monster. This episode has also one of my favourite moments of animation. To this day, I have no idea how Shaggy can be so flexible. But then they don't call him Shaggy for no reason. Overall, a great way to start the series, and plenty to build on. But nothing too special, so right near the middle for me.
And my feet are killing me. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them.
Another museum mystery. This one is slightly better than the Black Knight, even though obvious villain is very obvious in this one. Although they do sometimes throw in a red herring, so maybe it's not too obvious he is the villain in the end. The idea of there being a curse which turns those who remove the mummy from his tomb to stone is a really good twist, especially since during the episode we do see multiple characters turned into stone. It makes it seem very much like the curse could be real. Quite often in Scooby Doo episodes, there'd be some kind of curse, and it would only affect one person, making it very obvious they would be the culprit. It's a lot more convincing to try and show the curse working on multiple people. The mummy itself is a classic villain, and I think the setting of a museum works very well for the episode overall.
Let's take a look in that shack. It's the caveman! Let's get out of here!
Although not exactly the scariest foe, a caveman wielding a club is quite a terrifying prospect. It's one of the smarter episodes, as you are purposely deceived into thinking Professor Ingstrom could be the villain. After all, he does leave the lab very suspiciously, and he does have a machine to talk to fish. Clearly something very fishy is going on there. It's one of the few times where someone is framed for the crime, as Professor Wayne wanted credit for inventing the marine life communicator. I mean, let's be fair though, fish are probably not saying very much.
You got your baited. You got your baited. You got your baited.
So really not sure why you'd want to eavesdrop on their conversations.
Which way did they go?
They went that way.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's all right.
This is as close as you will get to a stereotypical ghost villain. The one we all imagine when you think of a ghost. It really does look like it's just a guy with a bedsheet over his head. What makes him stand out though is the maniacal laugh he provides. One of the most recognisable in the whole series. And if I heard it, I would run a mile. Also one of the only villains to seemingly be happy to get caught, as he shows the gang exactly how his magic tricks helped him create the illusion of being a ghost. A really enjoyable solid episode this one. Just a shame the ghost isn't exactly that creative. What the heck is going on here? We have a man that is cursed and ends up dying. Well, not really, this is Scooby Doo after all. A very intriguing premise though. The ghost of Elias Kingston has cursed the Weatherby family, and they will all grow old rapidly unless their fortune is surrendered to him. The only problem is, it's very obvious the villain has to be Stuart, as it's only him that is affected by the curse. A pretty standard looking villain as well, nothing that much stands out about him. I do still really like this one though, it's just classic Scooby Doo for me.
It's locked.
The season finale for the first series. We get a tale of the abominable snowman, otherwise known as a Yeti, and Yeti is much easier for me to say. A very memorable villain, and one that is not to be messed with. I mean, he literally tried to murder Velma. He is also very clever, as he tries to convince the gang that he turned Shaggy into a ghost. Take notes, Uncle Stuart. It's always more impressive and believable to try convince people that your powers are real by using them on someone else. The only negative I have is how obvious they make Mr. Greenway act so blatantly evil. He may as well just say from the start, "Hi kids, I am the Yeti." I mean, Mr. Leach is also suspicious, but out of these two guys, which do you think will fit into this costume? It's also one of the bigger crimes the gang uncovered, as both Greenway and Leach were smuggling jewels. And also, for a big guy, Greenway sure is nimble on those translucent skis.
Scooby Doo, where are you? Yo!
This is a very unique episode of Scooby Doo Where Are You? As it's the only one where the monster is not someone in a costume. Charlie the robot is actually a robot. It does pose more of a threat than usual, as he has the ability to use super speed.
Gotta go fast,
This is also one of the few episodes where the villain is female, since it's Miss Jenkins who tampered with the robot to make him go out of control, just because she didn't want a robot to be around kids. And apparently, this is all just forgiven, and she just gets away with it. I mean, couldn't she have just talked to her husband about it, rather than making a robot go out of control and almost end up murdering people? Overall, a very fun episode in Funland.
The ghost of Redbeard.
Who doesn't love a good pirate-themed episode? Redbeard is an iconic Scooby Doo villain. He has one of the few genuine jump scares in the series. The way he peeks through the window after being revealed is honestly very well done. He has a few tricks up his sleeve as well, managing to make the swords seem haunted. Are we really to believe this is all done with wires though? Even a master trickster surely couldn't get the swords to be manipulated in this way. He is also one of the few villains to have a joke around with the gang, rather than just trying to scare them. The whole scene with Shaggy and Scoob cooking him a meal is one of my personal favourites. In terms of the mystery, I was convinced the butler was going to be involved, with his creepy look, so it was a very good red herring. I wouldn't have thought Magnus would steal from his own ships.
All that goes up must come down.
If you are afraid of clowns, this might not be your favourite episode. Long before the trend of killer clowns, we had this ghost clown, causing havoc with bikes and using his secret weapon of hypnosis to get his victims into all kinds of sticky situations.
The power of the ghost clown is great. It's time for that silly dog to wake. You shall not work in this circus.
What's intriguing about this episode is we never really meet the villain until he is revealed at the end of the episode. He isn't even mentioned, meaning it's very hard to try and work out who the ghost clown actually is. Turns out he was a hypnotist and was fired from his job for stealing. And rather than looking for a new job, he decided to cause as much chaos as possible. And credit to him, he did a great job. Maybe the most generic title for an episode. It doesn't really reveal what the episode will be about. This one sees us venture back into the sea. However, instead of pirates, we're solving the mystery of the glowing deep sea diver, reported to be the ghost of Captain Cutler, who had died at sea many years ago. Sure, it's maybe a bit of an anticlimax to find out the ghost of Captain Cutler is...
Captain Cutler!
I know, I was shocked as well. I mean, I guess it could have been this guy, but realistically, we all knew it was going to be Captain Cutler. The way in which he runs is frightening. Looks like me when there's an all-you-can-eat buffet. The graveyard of ships and the overall mystery is a good plot. Much better than a lot of the other reasons for dressing up as a ghost.
Excuse me, sir, but why would reporters want to bother you?
They've been running me ragged ever since it showed up.
This is quite possibly the kookiest, silliest adventure the gang ever had, and I love it. The design of the spooky space kook is iconic. His manic laughter is brilliant. The only episode from Where Are You to feature an alien creature, and again, I was actually fooled into thinking the farmer with the gun was going to be more of a villain. My only nitpick is some of the animation looks very cheap. Even for Hanna-Barbera standards, this one feels like they use so many of the same animation reels of the spooky space kook. Oh my god, he's heading right for us.
My god, it's coming right for us!
Just a really guilty pleasure of mine though, had me thoroughly entertained. Jeepers, there is a creeper on the loose. A big mystery is afoot. A security guard struggles to push a tree. A dance is sabotaged. And oh my god, what on earth is that? And why does it run that way? An episode filled with twists, mysteries, and red herrings. Including this mad hermit, who reminds me of myself. God, it's been a while since I've been in the outside world. This episode is a frenzy of laughs, without being too silly though, as to remove the scariness of the villain. We even see Scooby become a father to a baby chick. At least this sidekick is much less annoying than Scrappy Doo. Also, for an old portly gentleman, Mr. Carswell sure does have a lot of energy. He must have downed a lot of Red Bull on that night.
I will return to the island in the morning to find out which of you remain, if any.
Firstly, we have the perfect setting for a Scooby Doo episode. A creepy house on an island during a thunderstorm. Secondly, we have by far the scariest Scooby Doo villains, the Phantom Shadows, with their movement, their incessant cackling, and the rattling of the chains. It's more than enough to scare adults, let alone children. I may be slightly biased on this episode as well, as it was the first ever Scooby-Doo media I consumed, and I ate it all up. Having watched it many times, I think it does hold up very well. It's also not exactly easy to spot who the villain might be. Sure, Mr. Creeps has the demeanour that lives up to his surname, but you also have the cousins. Each one could inherit the money if they force the others to leave the island. Cousin Slicker in particular looks very shifty to me. It has a great balance of humour to make up for the horrifying villains. There just is one episode I think tops it.
Yikes! There is a headless spectre!
So here we go. The best episode in my opinion is the Haunted House Hang-Up. Season 2 was very hit and miss, with only this and the Creeper making it into the top 10. We get a great premise told by a suspicious local. The story of the Headless Spectre. A classic haunted house setup. The Headless Spectre himself is cunning, tricking the gang by placing a dummy of his head and removing his head from a painting. Not only that, we get this great bop in the middle of the episode. In the end, it turns out the Headless Spectre is not even the villain. He's only trying to protect his inheritance. The real villain was the local from the start of the episode. Not sure why he also feels the need to dress up as a ghost, but he puts less effort into his costume than I put into editing my videos. Oof, there we go then. All 25 of the original Scooby Doo Where Are You episodes, ranked from worst to best. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with. What is your favourite series of Scooby Doo? And what are your favourite villains and episodes? But for now, take care and leave me alone.